or forefinger, the hand of a clock, a pointer, etc. Anything that manifests or denotes an index of character, an alphabetic list of matters, references, etc., as in a book. Now listen to this. Let's go back down. You've got Index Expurgatorius. Now, it's a list of interdicted books prepared by the Holy Office of the Roman Catholic Church. The Index Expurgatorius, no longer officially prepared, indicated those books which certain expurgations might be read. That means limited information. Then you got Index Librorum Prohibitorum, and that's the books which are prohibited or forbidden. In other words, what they did with the Inquisitionists, when they was burning the books, they have certain books that they put in what you call rare libraries or protected libraries. That has to do with the Moorish Empire, the rulership, etc. Rulership here. Philadelphia, where government really was before. Morocco up near the Great Lakes. Toledo, Ohio, the triangular port from which we ruled. The pathway to Boston and to Chicago, where you ruled before they took over, and have you lunched out thinking that this was some kind of wilderness and we was Indians and all that kind of crap. You know what I mean? You know how you talk about George Washington, you know, the guys were, stuff was rough, man, so, because, you know, like when they was fighting, man, you know, and it was pouring, it was freezing and stuff, you know, and they had rags around their feet, and, you know, these buildings was down here in Independence Hall and everything. You notice how low them windows are? Does that sound like warm buildings to you? You ever walk down past the Independence Hall, look at that building, you can, you know, those window sills come like that here. You ever seen those buildings before they covered them up inside? Brass rails, intricate architecture. Does that sound like a war economy to you? Huh? With Georgie, sailing Delaware, going up to Trenton, beating his keisters, went up to New York, they beat his keisters and stuff like that. And the redcoats are coming, don't fire your muskets till you see the whites of their eyes contrasted against their dark skin. Anybody ever go to Gettysburg when they have the Gettysburg Address on a yearly thing and they have the war enactment and everything? Go there and you'll see them Europeans come there every day dressed in Moorish costumes. And you'll see statues all the place with fezzes on them. And you never even pay attention to it. You're home. That's the point. Gettysburg, where Abraham Lincoln gave his so-called great speech, and his grandpa was a Moor. That's why they made mockery of him. And you look in the old newspapers, you'll see them dressed him in Moorish pantaloon with a scimitar, because they're angry because he was dealing with this Emancipation Proclamation thing, and it was confusing. Although the emancipation means transfer of property, the fakery making you think that it freed you, he was trying to hold the nation together. And they also mocked him because of his kind of curly hair and his ruddy skin, because his grandpa was a Moor. And so they did satires in the newspaper with him dressed in Moorish garb. But of course, we don't go into archives and look at stuff like that, do we? You understand what I'm saying? That's also why they killed him. Because they figured he was tricking them, you know, and really emancipating the Moors. He was really emancipating the European sons and then trying to bring peace. But it was up to Moors to emancipate themselves. But what he was trying to do is save the Union. You understand what I'm saying? And so a lot of us look at that history as their history. That's your history too. There's nothing that happens here that's not your history. This is your land, this is your government, and what they did, trade places and took over when they were actually the subordinate party. All right? Now, one more thing, I want to go into the Black's Law Dictionary. Keep note on this. Anybody got notes? Take notes. Remember, this is concept of mind. This has to do with suits because this is concept of mind of how you must be thinking. Do you understand? What must be already part of your knowledge base. Free white persons. Are we hearing? Black's Law Dictionary contains definition of the terms and phrases of American and English jurisprudence, ancient and modern. Ancient and modern. Are you with me? Keep note, free white persons, edition 3, Black's Law Dictionary, page 817, middle of the page, second column, free white persons. Absorb this, absorb this, absorb this. Free white persons refer to in Naturalization Act as amended by Act July 14, 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when used in 1 Statute 103(c)(3), meaning all persons belonging to the European races then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. Now, that's your perception because that was the common use of the term, meaning the Albus or the Albions, which means Albus, Albion's sons. And even called parts of the land, particularly over in the Washington State area, New Albion, when we colonized them in certain areas. Now, but that is not what it means. And this is here to clarify it for you. What free white person means, it includes all European Jews more or less intermixed. This is a caste system, I want you to understand. It includes all European Jews more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, and Celtics is Moors, in case you didn't know that, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Moors again, Latin, Moors again, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps, and Finns, and the Basques and Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal. The mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenicians, Moors again, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, Moors again, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia, Red Russians, Moors. It does not mean Caucasian race. Do you hear me? This is law book. It does not mean Caucasian race. It does not mean Aryan race. And it does not mean Indo-European races, nor mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. This is law case here. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person, ex parte Shahid, DC 205 F812 813, United States versus Cartosian, DC 6 F2D 919 921, ex parte Dow, DC 211 F4 86 487, Enray and Exong, DC 271 F23. I want you to understand that that's a caste system. So when the European says that he's white and you agree and don't contend it because you're white, you understand what you did? You just made him the ruler of the land. You dig it? That's why they call themselves white. Because white means God, God means ruler of the land. And that's law. See how unsafe it is for you to use those terms when you don't know what you're doing? Calling people black and white and all that kind of stuff. And saying you black and I'm proud of my black self. You just cursed yourself and made him God, then you're mad because he act like it. You made him God, now you're angry. Huh. So don't be pissed off. Get pissed off at yourself and straighten yourself up. And be yourself. Stop faking and being somebody that you're not. Because you're the rightful heir to the land. Act like it, but not with arrogance. And don't get mad at them, because they just, you know, it's like it's, you know how you taking care of somebody, you got a responsibility to somebody because they out to lunch, they got an amnesia, and they're walking around, gold coins is falling out the pocket, and they say, well, that's not according to my law of Jesus and my love of God. And you keep on, the coins is rolling, and then somebody, they start picking them up and stuff like that, and somebody else says, hey man, you're robbing him. And then the guy says, well, he don't want it. Why you get mad at me? Am I right? Huh? So the Moors, they want to be Africans, right? Just because Scipio Africanus, they decided he was their god. That's a Roman general who was fighting the Moors, so now they call themselves Africans and Africans Americans. That's a Roman general. That don't stop them from being Moors, it just means they was faking it then. Right? Now they call themselves Negro, Black, and Colored, because Philip II of Rome, of the Roman Church, that of course they was adopting to prove they was Christians, put out a bull, which is an edict of law from the canon law saying that the Moors, this is 1511, shall be called Spaniards. They don't hide that in history. So now they call them Moorish, Latin, Spanish. And then the Moors who lost the language talking about that ain't our language. And yet all science and law that is translated or given to the people is put in Latin. And all medical stuff is put in Arabic, etc. And Aramaic. And that's all your language. Belongs to you. And we're not Spanish, and we're not Puerto Rican, we're not Latino. We're Moroccans. And we are direct descendants of those Moroccans. And when you see them brothers and sisters on the islands, you call them Latins, they're Moors too. And the language is not Spanish. The language is Latin, Moorish Latin. And they're not Spanish. And when you talk about Puerto Ricans, well, Puerto Ricans, no, that means rich port. And they called it rich port because they went down there cutting the women's head off because we kept the gold on the women's necks. And solid, with no separation. Because our matriarchal system, the wealth was maintained on the women. And so they wore the jewelry. And we wore silver, mostly the brothers. We wouldn't wear the gold because the gold was for the woman because she brought life to earth. Until we hear her son, and the gold represent the son absorbed by the earth. She wore the gold that represented the wealth of the family. And they called it rich port because they came there and they chopped their heads off and stole the gold. And said, man, this is a rich port. That's what Puerto Rico means. Rich port. It's not a nationality. They're Moors. And there's Moorish forts all down in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominica, everywhere in the islands, South America, the United States of Brazil, the United States of Mexico, etc. And the Alamo is Allah's Moors. One star state. Then Louisiana, where you see the crescent of the star, they still use it upside down. One of the last strongholds before you went out to lunch. And the Mardi Gras and the Mummers Parade that they have right here is in mockery of you. You're home. That's the point. Have that in your head when you walk into a courtroom. And when you walk in the courtroom, any documents or papers that you fill out, etc., put your Moorish nationality on it. If they call you something else, you put your Moorish nationality on it anyway. Any documents they say race. Whenever you have a document that they say race, you have a right to do what?
Make another.
Exactly, or to do what? Put an affidavit to it. Or write over it. So if someone asks you your race, what is your race? Human. What do most people do? Light-skinned green people. Man, boy, I was at the mall the other day, man. I saw these light-skinned black leather shoes, boy. Snakeskin and stuff. Even a child knows that black don't come in light skin. That's lunch. But they know we are boys and girls. Because we relegate our common sense and authority to civilized beings who have us in wardship, so they place their name on us as a curse. And then we all tell what Jesus wants, what the Bible wants. Book of Isaiah. Book of Jeremiah leads into it. It says, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. Who do you think that's talking about? What body of people on this planet been going around for generations calling themselves by somebody else's name and being proud about it? Of course, we're too proud to admit that, aren't we? That's why everybody lets us stew in our nigger juice and just sets up shop and make a living off us. Because we're arrogant, self-righteous, poisonously, foaming at the mouth, do push carts up and down the aisle to tell you what Jesus wants. Don't even know themselves. And little European children from around the world knows who we are. Everybody in the world knows who we are but us. We out to lunch. Now, I'll get to you too.
Brother,
I apologize.
Peace. Brother Taz, can you speak to the issue that's often raised? I had a lecture here on what it would take for our movements to unite. And it seems as though to me, based on some of the feedback that I have received, our people want to continuously cling to the things and the names that allude to slavery.
Yes. And
they want to be able to have all these so-called outlets to get out of this Negro problem. Yeah. And I pointedly summarized that particular lecture under one key term, that in order for our movements to unite, the people must be nationalized as well as everything in our land.
And I agree.
And not only the things in our land, our diets, our clothing, our way of life, our attitudes, everything, even in terms of commerce, the gold, the silver.
Now, you're absolutely correct, and I understand your... Now, does everyone understand the question? He's making a question and a statement.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I would like for you to speak to that, because it seems I guess here's the key factor I want you to speak on, if you will. Our people want to cling to things.
Yes.
And don't want to face the reality and the truth. See, what you're doing is you're substantiating what you're saying. You understand? And you have proof in the pudding, but when you bring the proof and the truth to our people, they still want to fight. Say, well, I want to be African. We all Africans, and I'm black. Despite that, and we're going to do a revolution, and we're going to win. Yeah. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Very simple. You know how Romans take pride, and they're not there to be studied and appreciated. They're not God for nothing. You know, God is a generic term. God does not mean the supreme being. God means anything that is worshipped, adorized, or praised. Doesn't mean that it's positive or negative. You know, and because Allah has names. Divine providence has names. God does not mean divine providence. When they accepted that trick, they was already out the box. One of the things that the prophet had mentioned to the Moors, and particularly to the adepts, sheiks, etc., he said, the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. Study, study, study. And when you would have studied well and would come and ask me what to study next, I would reply, study yourselves. He brought the keys by teaching you of yourselves and teaching you to be yourselves, because in the process of that study, you become part of it, meaning that it becomes your own. You know, like if you're, like when you hold that meeting and you're trying to encourage Moors to unite, we're talking about conscious Moors. What is it that you really recognize that's a violation with us? This is the violation with us. Dwali said, in order to change the people, and I'm going to repeat that statement, in order to change the people, you must change their literature. Which means, you've got all these sheiks, adepts, with all these charms on and all these titles, all these seats of power, am I correct? Who the people trust and believe in. How many of them have written a book with what they know and presented it to the people for them to analyze, to criticize, to dissect, to give them some kind of footing that you know those who know are not telling? So if the sons of the Moabites won't talk, you know the Masons ain't, because they're bound by oath of death. And you know the Jesuits ain't, because they're stealing your birthright and infiltrated all parts of government. You know the Ku Klux Klan ain't, because they're not going to let the Moabite sons hit that European woman and kill that strain, because he's going to protect that queen of the lower light. Now, if we know these things, and don't tell our brothers and sisters, can they know? If they've been taught by the Romans and the Roman agents, i.e. black and nigger preachers, overseers, who were given those titles, and that's what they really represent, because a black leader is an overseer, because that's what the title is. You know they don't know that. They don't even know the science of genealogy. They don't know the science of rulership. They don't even know the stars that's in that flag that's governing here. They don't even know that it's a constellation. They don't even know the original star was Hex Alpha and not the 5 point. But they changed it because they didn't want too much information to get out symbolically. But the Moors know this. You know the Masons know this. You know the Jesuits know this. You know government officials know this. You know the industrialists know this. But everybody's silent. Why? It's not to their economic benefit for these troops to be out. But the Moors have a charge. They have a nationality card, don't we? They decided not to be their brother's keepers, didn't they? Didn't they? Didn't they? So when you or I or a brother or sister here who knows walks up to a brother or sister on the street or in the Bronx or in Los Angeles or in Hollywood or in Louisiana and try to school them, they think you're trying to convert to them some kind of religion because you're Muslim. They don't even know that Muslim means the body. Why? Because some Asiatic corrupted agents with the Europeans got people thinking that, well, you know, Muslim means one who submits to the will of Allah. Muslim is the physical body. Even the Europeans are Muslim. It's muscles and tissues and bones. The manifest fetus coming out of the womb of woman. Everything that lives here is Muslim. You submit to Allah because you ain't got a choice. And the sun shines on the good as well as the evil. And you eat and breathe and take up space. Now show me other rules that we going by that's here. That we can subvert that. Is that a fact? You see what I'm saying to you? But what blocks people is their quote-unquote fictional taught belief systems, their deication. But in order to attack the deication, which is sorcery, you can't tell them that they're under the rule of sorcery. Because they, one, won't believe you. One, two, they'll think you out to lunch. Three, they think you're a witch. And everything else. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So you got to bring them back to the earth from an intelligent and scientific point of view. So you're going to have to dig up what the Inquisitionists didn't bury. Do you understand? Then you're going to have to take what they got and decode it. But you got to decode it with your third eye. You've got to see what the common people can't see. It's a state of mind again. When you acquire that state of mind, they can give you any piece of literature and you can break it up. If you don't do it immediately, you can break it down later. That's why you have to have certain codes or certain pieces of information to change your state of mind so that you can see different. And until they begin to see different, you're not going to do anything with them. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you know, and I know that adept means expert. Am I right, brother? Now, if the experts who were given the charge and the responsibility to teach the people sold Jesus out, Joshua, right? Sold him out. So do you expect them to come free you? Because you know if the people knew the truth, they'd been free a long time ago. But they think it's some kind of spook game, don't they? How do they think that? Because the so-called leaders have taught them that. The same leaders that got nationality cards in their pockets and know the truth and sit on it. And then when you come along to try to raise them, they say, oh man, he's just some kind of religious guy with some black thing he's some version of Islam, you know, and pray 5 times a day and everything be all right. Of course, when they do it, it doesn't work, does it? Because the babies still get lynched. Women still get raped. They still in nigger lines. You understand what I'm saying? And so they don't believe it because people keep coming from a religious perspective. Religious is not spiritual. They're not related. But how many people relate spirituality and religion as one? You know what most people do, don't they? They don't know that sorcerers have been dealing with them. They don't know that most of the people in these holy garbs are sorcerers. And what happens if you tell them that? They'll come lynch you. You throw them a life raft and they're drowning. And they'll talk about, can't swim for shit, excuse the expression. I ain't in the plaid because it's not my belief. And let the babies drown too. Do you understand what I'm saying? Huh? They're going to tell you what God wants and pray while they're getting lynched. And do it generation after generation after generation after generation and then lie to their babies and talk about they're saved. And get mad at you because you were pointed out that they can't be. So you don't go there. I mean, you understand where I'm coming from? Now you go once more's who get a little bit of this information, and then what do? They try to use the UCC codes. Am I correct? Not that they're not. It's not a method. We even put it, even some literature, we gave it, what, about 20 years ago, we gave people UCC codes to show them how the thing worked. Then people start selling packages, making money off of them, their brothers and sisters. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It's the political forum where your power is, the plebiscite where your power is. It doesn't mean that it doesn't put some things in check, but that's not the way out. Nevertheless, they must understand those processes and what it is for, what it is used for. Now, the UCC's 1-207, 1-103 is the two codes within the UCCs that gives you the opportunity to get back into constitutional law. What people do, they try to argue the UCCs as that's the law, when they should use 1-207, 1-103, come back into constitutional fold in the proper person now, then enforce the Constitution, because that's the supreme law of the land. But no. They don't want to get back into the constitutional fold, do they? Huh? Let's go back to what Noble Dwali says, back to what you're just talking about. I'm talking to you remedy, to what you talked about. And I'm talking about concepts. Concept of mind when you enter this thing. You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles is key, right? You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those that know law. So what's the supreme law of the land? What's one of the first questions in what Great Seal lessons that have been given for ages? What's the supreme law of the land? Well, if the Constitution is supreme law, why are you using UCCs?
Duh.
I mean, you see how simple that is? But it doesn't mean that you don't use them as a qualification to get back to the law with those who are operating under the UCCs. That goes with the banks, etc., and all the other institutions. But if you don't know that concept, if you don't use it in that context, you're floating right into what? Outside law or foreign law.